and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We're broadcasting across all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m, broadcasting on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on TikTok. Folks, please tell us where you're coming from and we will give you a shout out. And please send in your comments and your questions. And this day last week was a great day for the UK. That was the day when the Supreme Court finally told the SNP and its supporters that they could not have another referendum in order to try to break up Britain. Unless, of course, the British Parliament agreed to another referendum to try to break up Britain, which thankfully it's not going to do, at least not in the lifetime of this particular Parliament. So that's put the kibosh on the short-term plans for the SNP, and we'd like to know what you think about that and what your thoughts are on that as well. And also on this St. Andrew's Day as well, the 30th of November, another auspicious day. And we love saying that word, auspicious. In fact, we're probably about the only people in the United Kingdom who say that word, auspicious. And we say it so much, it is in fact auspicious that we say it. So, hello to everybody who's come in already. And Adam was the first in from the great British county of Leicestershire. And Harry says, it's another nice but chilly evening of Force for Good and unionists around the world. Great to hear about last week's Supreme Court ruling, wasn't it just, Harry? Absolutely great. And we've got a report on that coming up. Hello to Alan and to Stuart and also to Lorraine. Good evening to all of you, and to Derek. And Rita asks, how are you all doing? Well, we're all doing very well, certainly here in the AFFG studios. Adam brings up something that we're going to be mentioning very shortly. Leaked footage shows the civil service mandarins joking about breaking up the UK, sparking outrage. We've got a lot to say about that. We're going to dedicate a few minutes to that in a moment, Adam, because that's absolutely outrageous, and it's something that we've always said is outrageous. Good evening to Becky from the great British city of Dundee. And to Madeleine de la Reine, originally from Glasgow and now living in Spain. And Nelson, good to see Nelson, and Catherine, great group of lads and lassies in the house on this St. Andrew's Day. And to Elizabeth as well. How are you, Elizabeth? Now, and to Jack. And to Anthony. Thanks for being with us last week, Anthony. One of our stalwart AFFG activists on our thin red line, as we like to call ourselves. Anthony says, happy St. Andrew's Day. Indeed, happy St. Andrew's Day. And we've got the saltire here flying in the background. And Paul from the Garden of England, which is Kent. Hello, David. Now, last week we really had a good event. We knew that the Supreme Court were going to be making their judgment, and we knew that the Scottish National Party and its supporters were having a cry and moan pity party outside Holyrood. They were wanting 5,000 people, 5,000 outraged people to go down and demonstrate against this terrible decision. In the end, they got about 275, and more about their numbers in a minute. But we had to go down, keep the British end up as always, and to show that there are plenty of people, in fact a majority of people in Scotland, who want the United Kingdom to stay together. As we said, we want to stay in the UK. And we took along this poster that says we want to stay in the UK. Colourful as always, as we always are here in A Force for Good. We have a great team of designers who really deliver the goods when it comes to making a visual impact. So we went along. There was 20 of us turned up to hold the flag high and to get the message across. And when we turned up about 3:30 or thereabouts, there was only a handful of the more hardcore Scottish nationalists there. And we've got a wee video of, well, actually what we'll do, we'll start with a wee video of me just summarising it. Because when we arrived, I just spoke straight to camera and I said a few words, and this is what I said. My name is Alistair McConnachie and I am a director of A Force for Good, and we're down here right now at Holyrood on a great day for British democracy and a great day for the Union, because this is the day where the Supreme Court has told us what we already know, okay, which is that a devolved arm of the British Parliament, which is what Holyrood is not able to have another referendum to try to break up Britain without the agreement of the British Parliament. And that is, of course, the way that it should be in a devolved constitution. So that's one good thing. The law has been clarified. And the second good thing about it is that the Scottish National Party and their supporters can no longer pretend that a less than 1/3 minority of the Scottish electorate, which voted for them in 2021, is somehow a democratic mandate to try to break up Britain again. What about the 2/3, the over 2/3 of us who did not vote for the Scottish National Party? What about everybody else throughout the United Kingdom who is also involved here? And thankfully the law today has been able to clarify that the Union is held together by something more substantial than the whim of Nicola Sturgeon or her few Scottish National Party supporters. If you'd like to join us, we'll be here right through to 7 o'clock. See you again. So that was a wee thing. That's had about 11,000 views on TikTok, that particular iteration to camera. And you wouldn't have seen that if you were on TikTok, although you'll see it on our TikTok page. But if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, you'll be able to see that wee video when it plays. And that was the message, basically, of the day, was that that basically the United Kingdom is going to be stronger as a consequence, that it was a good day for the UK. It was a good day for all of us who want to stay in the UK. And we made that very clear, and we were making that clear on our megaphone as we were addressing the Scottish nationalists, or rather the SNP supporters across the road, and the Nicola Sturgeon fanboys and fangirls who were standing waiting for Nicola Sturgeon to come on as if they had never seen her before or heard of her before. In great excitement, they certainly were, but we cheered them up from our position across the road, and we've got a wee video here which will show as well of us just walking into position. So we got all our stuff ready at the corner at the roundabout, and then we just walked into position like a boss, like a gang of bosses. We just walked into position right across from them. Let's play that wee video right now. Fantastic. That was us there walking into position like a gang of 20 bosses, and we certainly did boss the SNP and their supporters for the rest of the evening with our megaphone. And we've got one or two pictures which we'll bring up here. Let's bring up the first photograph. Some really good pictures came out of the event. That's us just getting ready before we walk up the road like a gang of 20 bosses with our powerful poster, "We want to stay in the UK," and of course our powerful flag, "A Force for Good," which you can see in the background there, plus our 6-metre flagpole with a Union Jack on top of it, just in case anybody wondered what side we were on. Okay. That's a shot as the evening's beginning to draw in, looking over at a motley crew of Scottish nationalists waving the great British flag, which is also known as the Saltire. Okay, and that's a great picture there of one of our stars. As you can see, the motley crew in the background. And we are standing up there, and that's myself addressing a diminishing group of Scottish National Party supporters who are shouting over at us in the manner of their kind. Okay. Great supporter there with a Scottish and British hoodie, which is available from our hoodie store, our patriotic pro-UK hoodie store, and we'll put the link, you'll find the link in the Facebook and Twitter comments later this evening for that particular hoodie. Okay, another stylized photograph there of our poster. Okay, and that was perhaps one of the best pics really that came out of the night, which was published in the Herald newspaper, published on the Scotsman website, and we've seen it around elsewhere as well. A great shot of the Union Jack, 3 of our posters, and the British flag, also known as the Saltire, in the background there. Okay, and there you go. That was when Sturgeon was arriving, and the Scottish National Party fanboys and fangirls could hardly contain themselves with excitement. And that looks like a big crowd, but literally that's about 2 deep. And right behind them is a water feature that exists in the grounds of the Scottish Parliament. So there's these small ponds right behind them. So these people are actually, they're standing in front of one of the ponds, and then they go round the side of the pond. So as I say, we were not able to get an exact count, but we did have somebody in the crowd who was able to estimate that there was no more than 300, but probably a little over 250. So we're going to go with a figure of 275 there, which is our estimation in this particular event. Normally we can get a very specific count, but in this one it was much harder to count, and but it was fairly straightforward to estimate. And as we say, we estimate about 275, which was considerably down on the 5,000 people that they were saying were going to be there. Okay. And that's a good shot. That appeared in the Daily Express. Very good picture, that. And there's a lady there with a rolled up poster, and she also had another poster which I'm just going to show you actually and just read out. Does Nicola Sturgeon struggle to pay bills? Take care while food shopping due to price increases? Obtain a doctor's appointment? Wait for hours in accident and emergency? Wait 16 hours for an ambulance? Will independence change this? Delusional, surely. That was good. That was a good poster from that lady. She had two posters and she was holding those up, much to the annoyance of the SNP and the Nicola Sturgeon fans across the road. Okay, let's see what more pictures we've got here. There we go. We've seen that one. We've seen that one. We've seen that one. And that was one that appeared in The Guardian. That's a really good one as well. Supporters of the UK Union outside the Parliament in Edinburgh on Wednesday evening. Okay. So we appeared in the Herald, the Scotsman, the Daily Express, the Guardian. We got mentioned in the Times. And we were also interviewed by STV. And what I liked about STV was they gave us equal billing with Leslie Riddoch. So she got 30 seconds and we got 30 seconds as well. And I'll just play that video of me on STV.
It's important to be here on this auspicious occasion because this is a great day for the United Kingdom and it's a great day for British democracy, and we are so glad that the Supreme Court has been able to clarify the law, which we pro-UK folk already knew, which is that a devolved arm of the British Parliament is not able to have a referendum to destroy Britain.
Just reading off some TikTok comments there while that was playing. That was the STV interview. I was just getting into my stride at that point. I have to say, I went on at great length about other things, especially about the fact that the Scottish nationalists were trying to claim a democratic mandate, when in fact, if you add up all their votes in 2021, and you add in the Greens and you add in Alba and a couple of small other parties, it doesn't even come to 1/3 of the Scottish electorate. So, as I said to the STV man, what about the 2/3 of us who did not, in fact, vote for either separation or to endorse a second referendum? What about our democratic rights? They didn't use that bit, but that's something that needs to be said and that needs definitely to be pointed out. And we're not going to stop pointing that out. We're not going to stop pointing that out because it's absolutely critical to this. You know, if you're going to talk democracy, SNP folk, Nicola Sturgeon, Angus Roberts, if you're going to talk democracy, we're going to put that right back in your face and we're going to show you what's democratic and what a proper democratic mandate would look like. Okay, so don't try to tell us that you've got some sort of democratic right, especially when the turnouts at Scottish elections are far, far lower than the turnouts at Westminster elections in Scotland. Huge difference between a turnout at a Westminster election, which is always averaging around about 66, 67%, and the turnout at Holyrood elections, which are only usually just a little bit over 50%. Okay, so don't give me a democratic mandate nonsense on that. Not at all. In fact, we're putting together a big article that we'll probably publish this week just about what would constitute a democratic mandate for such a referendum. And of course, as unionists, we set that bar as high as possible, because guess what? We don't want to make it easy for you. We don't want to make it easy for people to try to break up the United Kingdom. Oh my goodness me. I'll get to this in a minute. But continuing on with our report, there's one last photograph there which I liked, which was from the BBC. And they had... let's just fire. There it is there. What I like about this, again, it gives us equal billing. Two sides of independence debate gather outside Holyrood. Demonstrators for staying a part of the UK and protesters backing Scottish independence held placards and waved flags peacefully outside Holyrood. Pro-independence rallies were being held in a number of towns and cities in Scotland, and a small number of pro-union backers gathered in the capital. And it's quite a nice stylish shot of our very stylish and stalwart activists, where it says the demonstrators gathered at tea time on Wednesday following news. Tea time? Gathered at tea time. That's quaint. Well, with the demonstrators gathered at tea time on Wednesday following news of the Supreme Court ruling. What a great bunch of guys and gals we have here at A Force for Good. Okay. Now, it mentioned there about rallies, pro-independence rallies. Well, I mean, gatherings really of very small numbers of people. There was this one in Edinburgh, about 275. There was a sort of maybe slightly smaller one in Glasgow, and a smaller one still in Aberdeen. And what was good, and there was others like in Lochgilphead. There was one, right? Well, how many people are you going to get in Lochgilphead? There'd be like the local SNP member and his wife, probably, but they called that a rally. And then they said there was rallies in Berlin, and you know, you can think of what's a rally in Berlin going to look like. Oh crikey, you know. But it ended up, it was actually 4 people standing outside the Brandenburg Gate. Well, 5 if you include the person that took the photograph. So you know, they do like to use this word rally in a very expansive sense of the word. Let's just read out some comments here. Marcus says, I've seen in the pictures Sturgeon loyalists waving the saltire with EU stars overlapping it. This is the desecration of a flag. They hate the Tories, but they love the EU. Remember, it was Ted Heath who allowed Britain to join the EEC. So congratulations to them for supporting that Conservative. Indeed, they haven't. I'm pretty sure they haven't thought that one through, Marcus. There was a lady that Becky's making reference to here, that, and we know exactly who she is because she's one of our people, who went to the rally in Aberdeen, and she held a Union Jack there, and that's pretty ballsy behaviour, quite frankly, to just simply go and say, look, I'm going to stand in front of you with a Union Jack, which she did, and she got good publicity for that. She got interviewed by the local North Sound News, and their video of her got 185,000 views on Twitter. And our video that we put up got 44,000 views on TikTok. So she got her message across. And we'll just play this video. She's getting a wee bit drowned out by the nationalists in the background, but it's well worth watching this video. And this is how you do it, folks. This is how we do it.
Firstly, I think it's clear to see what side of the debate you're supporting. Why did you come out tonight?
Because I wanted to come out and celebrate what's happened today. I think it's great. I think it's shown why we've got laws in this country, and I think all of Scotland is not the SNP. So I think just come down, hear what they've got to say. They've never got any answers for MD. I wish they would just get on with the day job, get the economy sorted. They've got devolved powers that they can't manage under. How on earth are they going to do any better under a full independent?
I guess, was it necessary, do you think, to come out with the Union Jack today?
Yes. Yeah, because they can come out on our streets, so why shouldn't I? You do that again, you'll get my Union Jack fell over your head.
Do you feel you're expressing...
Sorry? No, I wasn't. Well, I didn't like him to be hitting me over the head with his pitch either.
You're expressing your own opinion here.
Yes.
Do you feel welcome?
No, but I don't care. Don't care.
Absolutely. That was well said by that lady. And what was particularly good is that she said all of Scotland is not the SNP. That's a good phrase. All of Scotland is not the SNP. And I'm glad she said that, because some people who are not in Scotland, who don't follow politics, maybe in the rest of the United Kingdom, they'll go, is all of Scotland the SNP? Because it seems whenever we switch on the telly, that's all we see is people in Scotland, that is MPs and Ian Blackford and that lot, talking all that nonsense, and they'll get the wrong impression, totally the wrong impression of people in Scotland. So thank goodness she was able to make that point. All of Scotland is not the SNP. And folks, that's how you do it. That's why we always say, get yourself one of our Union Jack flags, because you never know. You never know when you are going to need it. You never know. And if you've got it in your drawer, then you can just boom, get it out, go down to your local Scottish Nationalist Party rally and make a scene and become world famous as a consequence. Very easily done. So you can get these 3x2 flags. They're custom made. You can get them at our shop. And our shop is a forceforgood.uk/shop-1. We'll put up the address there for our shop. So, and yeah, as Becky says, they kept brushing their flags over her head and face, as you saw there, but she took it very well, and she was not ruffled at all or bothered by that. And that was in Aberdeen. Okay, folks, we're back there. Had a minor hitch on Facebook. So yes, a good event, and we did well, and we got our point over. And thank you to everybody who is commenting on TikTok tonight. We're on fire on TikTok tonight, which is great news. Great news. All these comments coming in. As Ravia says, they had a Supreme Court decision and they lost. Sturgeon, she fought the law and the law won. She fought the law and the law won. Ethan says, good to see a unionist live and streaming. Chat there says, you're on fire. Absolutely. We are always on fire on TikTok. Now, what we're going to do, it's the bottom of the hour. I should have mentioned, actually, we have got our competition, of course, coming up. And our competition is for this Union Jack patch and a Union Jack trolley token. That's a combo. It's a Union Jack combo tonight. Patch and trolley token. It says adhesive patch, but I don't know if you can take the back off that or what. But you could if you wanted, but we'll leave it to the person that receives it before we try to take the back off it. And also, you can also sew it if you wanted. So that's coming up after our competition, which will follow on this day in British history, which is right now, on this day in British history. Now, on this day, of course, it's the 30th of November, which is St. Andrew's Day. Now, what's all that about, you might well ask? How did St. Andrew become the patron saint of Scotland? Well, basically, as many will know, St. Andrew was the brother of Simon Peter, who put together were Jesus' first disciples. And the legend has it that here in Scotland there was a battle between Angus II and a Northumbrian geezer called Athelstan. And this was back in the day when a large part of eastern Scotland was what is now was Northumbria. Okay, so technically you could say that was English, but it wasn't really. It was just back then nobody knew even what country they were living in. They were just fighting each other for basically for the sake of it. But they had a battle just outside. It was the Picts led by Angus II and the Northumbrians led by Athelstan, and they were having it out in an area in East Lothian, which is now called Athelstanford. And it was at the battle there, which was in 832, and legend has it that Angus prayed that if he won the battle, he would make St. Andrew the patron saint of Scotland. And he, legend also has it that a white cross in the shape of the St. Andrew cross appeared in the sky, and Angus went on to win the battle, and he made St. Andrew the patron saint of Scotland. And there's a wee picture here of a church in Athelstanford, which we'll just stick up here. And I was thinking about this name, like Athelstanford. That sounds like a very English name, and it's unusual to have a village in Scotland called Athelstanford. But you understand that when you realise that that area of Scotland was in fact back then English, or rather Northumbrian. The picture here is of this church, Athelstanford, birthplace of Scotland's flag, and that's just outside Edinburgh. I've never been there. But to complicate matters, right, as if that wasn't complicated enough, I was reading that some people think that Athelstanford actually refers to the English king Athelstan, who didn't come on the scene for another 102 years later. So that's one of these pieces of history that you read and you get frustrated because you can't resolve it. So some people are saying that Athelstanford is named after the bloke who fought Angus II in 1832. And others say it's named after King Athelstan, who was on the scene in 100 years later. So I'm afraid I can't solve that puzzle for you, other than to say there's a village outside Edinburgh called Athol Stanford. Who knew? Who knew? I didn't know that until this morning. Anyway, the things you learn on St. Andrew's Day. What else today on the 30th of November? The birthday of Winston Churchill, who was born on this day in 1874. And he was born, as you do get born, at Blenheim Palace, would you believe, which was his grandfather's home. And he was to go on to do, among other things, become the MP for Dundee. And not many people know that. Not many people know that Winston Churchill was in fact the MP for Dundee, for the great British city of Dundee, for 14 years. 14 years. That's almost like a career in itself. He was the MP for Dundee. And he was also the Lieutenant Colonel commanding the 6th Battalion Royal Scots Fusiliers in World War I. And he died on the 24th of January 1965. And there's a book that's been written about him. Cheers, Mr. Churchill, Winston in Scotland. And that was published last month, October 2022. And that looks at his career and his controversies also in Scotland. And I've read reviews of it, and it does appear to be a fairly well balanced book. It's not out to do him down. So there you go. Cheers, Mr. Churchill, Winston in Scotland. So he was born on this day in 1874. There you go. So that's on this day in British history. Let's look at some comments here. Kyle says, we knew that there would be some people on TikTok who didn't like the reference to Winston Churchill. So that's why we brought it up, guys. We brought it up just to remind you of that. Alfie says, love AFFG history. Absolutely. Becky says, Churchill was some boy. Alan has read Boris Johnston's book about Churchill. He says it's good. Stuart says, thanks for the info, Alistair. And Stephen Bailey says, happy St. Andrew's Day. James says, something I don't really quite understand there. Maybe it's not directed at us. DG, what's DG? Who knows? Alan says, if you go to St Andrews, there's a free museum, I think, run by the university. There's a lot about St Andrew in it. It was known as the cult of St Andrew, and he never actually visited Scotland in his life. Yes, it's interesting how these things come about. So here's competition for this little patch. Send your answers, please, to contact@aforceforgood.uk. And the first person with the right answer will get this wee cloth patch and trolley token. And the question is, Winston Churchill was born on this day, and for 14 years he was the Member of Parliament for which great British city in Scotland? In which great British city in Scotland was Winston Churchill the MP for 14 years? Send your answers, folks, to contact@aforceforgood.uk, and we will read out the answer at the top of the hour. Fantastic. Fantastic. Raymondo says Blackpool. Blackpool is not the correct answer. But it could well have been in the great British town of Blackpool. Now, as part of the general meltdown that the SNP and its supporters, I'm going to start using that term more, the SNP and its supporters, because I was thinking about the phrase Scottish nationalist. And you know, we're Scottish and we love the Scottish nation. So why should the SNP get to use the phrase Scottish nationalists all the time? So we're not using that phrase so much now. We're going to just be more particular, the SNP and its supporters. Because at the end of the day, we are proudly Scottish also. And we are true Scottish patriots. So we're going to talk more about the SNP and its supporters. So the SNP and its supporters have been having a meltdown, obviously, because they can't get their way. Like, as the chat a couple of weeks mentioned, like angry toddlers, they're always crying about stuff. So they can't get their way, and so we have to rub it in now. Like, after a victory, you've got to take advantage of that. Okay, you can't just pretend that you didn't have a most massive win. You've got to say, yeah, we won. And here's what we're going to do as a consequence. And one of the things now that they must do is to stop the civil service in Scotland being used to break up the United Kingdom. Now, we've been on this for years and years and years, and now it's becoming a news story. Now it's finally becoming a news story. It's like, how come the Scottish National Party have a constitution unit? How come they've given £20 million, they've earmarked £20 million of our money to this constitution unit to promote a referendum, when the law has just come out and says you can't have a referendum? How come they are spending £1.5 million a year on the salaries for 22 civil servants to work to promote a second referendum when they cannot have a second referendum? It's an absolute outrage. And this is not SNP party money. This is the taxpayers' money that is raised from the British public. And the SNP is using it for a team of civil servants in their constitution unit to promote the case for independence. That's utterly mad. Utterly mad. And the fact that the British government since 1999 has gone along with this, Labour, Tory, Lib Dem coalition and Tory alike, all of these parties have gone along with it, and not one of them has said that's wrong. And well, now's the time for them to actually do something. And this was brought clear to us this morning when it was revealed that one of the head civil servants in Scotland actually said his job was, quote unquote, to break up the kingdom. And let's just put up the news article of that there. And this is a bloke just basically admitting it. Thinks it's a big laugh that he's getting paid money to break up the kingdom. And there it is. My job is, quote, breaking up kingdom. Civil servant lets slip his brief from the SNP. One of Nicola Sturgeon's top civil servants has been caught on video telling colleagues his job is about, quote, breaking up the UK. Ken Thompson's shock statement has sparked calls from opposition MSPs for civil servants to concentrate instead on the cost of living crisis. He is something called the Director General of Strategy and External Affairs. Don't they love giving themselves? But Director General, well, who comes up with that term? That's like if you work in maybe communist China, you call yourself the Director General. You don't call yourself the Director General when you're working for a flippin' devolved parliament, okay, on some silly wee job about some stupidity that shouldn't even be allowed. Oh, I'm the Director General. I'm getting thousands and thousands of pounds every year. Oh, these guys. I mean, what a cynic. Troffers. Never a trough gone unsnuffled by these people. Oh, anyway, okay, we can take that picture of him off. Oh, Director General of Strategy and External Affairs. Goodness me, what planet do these people live on? Planet, let's make a lot of money for doing sweet nothing. Planet is what planet they live on. Anyway, we're here to upset his apple cart and to tell him he's not the big I am after all, okay? And he shouldn't even be allowed to do what he's doing. And I do hope he's listening. And if he's not listening, please somebody record this and send it to him so he can get the benefit of my opinion on that matter. But at the end of the day, he's just taken a salary because he's been allowed to. Where the real problem lies is the British government, not the SNP, it's the British government which allows that man to do what he's doing. Because here's how it works. The civil service in Edinburgh is a branch of the British civil service. It's all one unitary civil service. And the head of the civil service is a cabinet minister that sits around Rishi Sunak's table. He's called Simon Case, and his official title is Cabinet Secretary. And he's head of what's called the Home Civil Service, which is to say the British Civil Service. And he's in charge of the Director General in Scotland and other such people. He's in charge of it, and he could say, look, you're not allowed to do it. Now, I know why they're allowing it. Because every civil servant in their civil service code, they have a commitment to follow the will of their ministers. And the Civil Service Code was put together when it was not ever thought that their ministers would actually be ministers who wanted to destroy the nation state that employed them. That was never really thought through at the time. However, we do have the state now where there are people employed, there are people governing, rather, parts of the state who want to destroy the state, such as we've got here in Scotland. And so if you have a government at Westminster that wants to keep the state together, then you're going to have to figure out how your civil servants deal with that particular matter. And the only way that you can deal with that is simply to pass a law on it. You cannot say to the civil service, change your code, because that'll just cause all sorts of legal problems. They'll take that to court, and then it'll go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will find that there's not actually a law to prevent the civil servants doing that. So what you have to do is you have to pass a law that says the civil servants cannot do that. And guess what? We wrote the law for them. 6 paragraphs, 6 short paragraphs, and we wrote it in an article which we'll put up there in the comments, and you'll be able to read it. And it's really, really very simple. And we put it here also in our magazine, A Law to Stop the Civil Service Pushing Indy Agenda. And it's really all wrapped up in the first paragraph here, where we say, the Home Civil Service shall not be used, nor shall it be allowed at any time to assist or promote by any means, including physical, economic, research and administrative, any devolved UK administration on any matter which falls outside that administration's devolved competencies or which relates to a reserved matter, especially including but not limited to the separation of any part of the United Kingdom from the rest of the UK. Boom! Bang! That's it. Could not have been said better. Could not have been said more perfectly. That is beautiful. That's beautiful. We wrote that. And I have a degree in Scots law, and I studied constitutional law as well. So that's all that needs to be done. And you can pass that law. In 48 hours, get it straight through the Parliament. You know how quickly they can pass laws if they want. They could pass that law, and that would stop that. It would save all that money that's being wasted, and that's ultimately what needs to happen. But the question is, will the British government have the cajones to do that? Because at the end of the day, the Tories are just the Tory party in power. So many of them are herbivores. They don't want a fight, especially if they're facing a carnivore. It's like, I'm just going to freeze, or I'm just going to hide behind this little bush here, and I'm not going to do anything and hope that this all passes. Okay, so if you're going to do this, you need to be ready for a fight, but you need to do it if you're going to save the country, because it's utterly ridiculous that these people are allowed to do it. And we as unionists, we can't compete with that. Okay, we can't compete with a constitution unit that's on a £20 million budget pushing out nonsense. We can't compete with that. Okay, so if you're the British government, you've got to give us some help here as well. Don't fund our opponents. Don't fund our opponents. I made reference to this magazine. This magazine is also a year old today because it arrived in our offices here on the 30th of November in 2021. Last year, it arrived on St. Andrew's Day, which we took as an omen, as Angus II took the saltire clouds in the sky as a good omen as well. And so you can get this from our shop. It's 40 pages and it's 102 policies to keep the UK together. And you can also buy it along with our wee book for the Union for a discount together. They're a £5 each, or they're £9.50 together. And this is a brilliant stocking filler. A brilliant stocking filler. Please do stock up on these. Roger says, glad Scotland is finally waking up and becoming a normal country. Absolutely. All American Scotsman says, it's no. The people have spoken. They certainly have. So one or two good points as a result of that. Again, the Lib Dems, who have very rarely have very much to say, but sometimes they say good things, they actually come up with the idea that Nicola Sturgeon, her party, the SNP, should actually pay back all the money that was spent on the court case, which is at least 114,000, but probably an awful lot more. And of course, that's taxpayers' money. You and me, Gubbins, you and me, that had to pay for that. So the Lib Dems have actually come up and said the SNP as a party should be paying that back out of their own party funds. Well, at least it's a good idea, but of course, they will do that as much as they'll think about flying to the moon. But at least it was a clever thing that they said. Other people pushing out the idea that the 20 million... That's some picture of Sturgeon, isn't it? It's an incredible picture of Sturgeon. Anyway, some people saying that, the 20 million set aside for the failed 2023 referendum shouldn't be spent on the failed referendum that's not going to happen. So far, Angus Robertson is saying, no, we're going to continue to commit it to the Constitution Unit. And why does he say that? Because that's what they say. And they're never going to do anything different. And they only understand power and the law. That's the thing. You can't be nice. You can't say, you've lost. Could you maybe just put the £20 million back again? And spend it something intelligent like nurses or teachers or doctors. No, they'll never do that. You need to make the law. You need to force them to do it, because they'll take what they get without thanks. They'll bank it and they'll pretend like they never received it. And that's what they'll always do with our money. Take it without thanks, bank it, and then pretend like they never received it. And they'll certainly never pay it back unless they're forced to pay it back. And this is where you need a government that's going to take them on. And I read this article this week by the political editor of The Spectator, who looks, or rather sounds, like this total herbivore. And he's going, you've just got to keep being nice, keep being reasonable with the Scottish nationalists, and everybody will suddenly realise that we are the reasonable people. That's not actually the way that politics works at all. You have to be heard. And to be heard, you need to be loud. And when you're loud, you're sometimes going to upset people. You can't go through life hiding down the rabbit hole forever. The silent herbivore versus the noisy carnivore strategy will not work and does not ever work. It just means that you seed ground and you're constantly hiding down your rabbit hole until the big wolf carnivore has gone to sleep, and then you come out and you potter about in the dark of night and you eat a few lentils, and then the carnivore wakes up and you scurry back down your rabbit hole again. And that's like the Tories versus the SNP, basically. And being reasonable doesn't work when nobody notices that you're being reasonable anyway. You know, so you're not getting any thanks for being reasonable. So what's the point? So Derek says, keep up the great work, guys. Sturgeon says, Sturgeon is causing terrible division in Scotland. Members of my family want Indy, but I just tell them I'll always support this no matter what. Good for you, Marion. Good for you. Christopher says, these are excellent publications. Screenshot. Becky says, more chance of flying to the moon than Indy 2. Christopher says there should be a court case. It sounds like misappropriation of public funds. Well, I'm glad to see that a group of Scottish businessmen are investigating that possibility. Now the SNP warns see you in court. New legal bid to stop nationalists using public money on tearing Scotland out of the Union. Now this is a private initiative from some private businessmen, and good for them for spending their money on it. But as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, this has to be a government law that's passed, because you can take that to court and it could go right up to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court will find that under the present dispensation, the SNP are allowed to do that, because under the present dispensation, unless there's a law against it, or unless it's specifically reserved, then everything is permitted. And the SNP are well aware of that. Under the present dispensation, everything is permitted unless there's a law against it that it is specifically reserved. So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the British government making a law, as I mentioned there, to stop the civil servants getting involved in pushing the breakup of the United Kingdom on British taxpayers' money. Now, the British Christmas cards. This is the last year that we're going to be using these particular Christmas cards, and we've got an offer for our union supporters. That is the people who donate monthly. You can claim up to 3 packs of these. That's 3 packs. Each pack has got 5, so that's like 15 cards. You can get them for free. Okay, if you're a union supporter and you want a pack of 5 or 10 or 15 of these cards, then just contact us at contact@aforceforgood.uk and we'll send them to you free. Okay, because we want to clear these now, because this is the last year that we're going to have these. If you're not a union supporter, then by all means, please simply buy them from our shop, and we'll put the link out there as well. But you can become a union supporter from £5 a month, and if you become a union supporter, you'll be automatically allowed to claim up to 15 of these cards. Now, we have a winner. Good. Now, we asked the question on this day Winston Churchill was born, 30th of November, and he became the MP for many years, 14 years, of which great British city? And the answer, of course, was Dundee. Not many people know that. And the winner is Leah Plant. Wonderful. Good stuff, Leah. Could you please use that same email and send us your address, and we'll get a copy of this in the post to you, and we'll get this in the post to you, and we'll get one of our cards as well, which might be the Christmas card, or it might be this one, our Rule Britannia card, or it might be our King James becomes King of Great Britain card. But we'll send that wee package to you tomorrow. Thank you, Leah, and congratulations for that. Alan says, well done. As does Becky. Great. Roger says you'd take the King James one. It's a cracker, and it's even got a big wee write-up on the back. Because one of the things that inspired us was collecting cigarette cards. Remember back in like the 60s and 70s, you could have cigarette cards, and there'd be some British person or battle or event or invention or whatever, and on the back it would have a wee write-up, so you could actually like learn history from looking at these wee pictures. So what we're going to do is, in the months and years to come, we're going to have like lots of these cards that we use. We use these mainly just for like complimentary thanks to people. Our Union Jack says, well done. Catherine says, well done, chick. Good. Folks, it's the top of the hour, and thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for your comments. Thanks. We've been on fire on TikTok tonight, and we've been doing well across the other channels, including Facebook and on YouTube. We will be here next Wednesday at 7 o'clock, bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis, as always. And Becky says, great show. Thank you. So please, folks, tune in then. Until then, do have a good week. It just remains for me to say, there's a programme on at 9 o'clock some of you might be interested in, about King Charles, Saving Dumfries House. That's on this evening at 9 o'clock on ITV. I knew I had to say something else just at the end. That's great work that he did to use a lot of his own money to renovate Dumfries House here in the west of Scotland. That's on this evening at 9 p.m. Some of you might be interested in that. So until next week, it just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next week.